Sorry guys, I actually had to change my t-shirt. I'm not sure if you picked up on it, but in the opening sequence, I spilt Red Bull on my t-shirt. You'd probably notice it now that I've said it, but changed my t-shirt and we're back. We are back for Speed Ramps Part 2. Sorry for the delay. We have been busy setting up the new Juco Media office. I'm sure you got a quick glimpse of it in the opening sequence. But after posting Speed Ramps Part 1, I had a lot of messages about fixing my audio, which I have, and when Part 2 was coming out. So with that being said, let's jump straight into it. So in this tutorial, we're actually going to be going through the sequence you just watched on your screen. Now this is a great example because it involves a zoom in transition, a zoom out transition into a drone shot that slows and then zooms back out into a shot of the pool. Along with that, we're going to be going through the planar tracker to help stabilize your speed ramps and the motion blur that is available on my website for free. So I've gone ahead and created a timeline. Now the timeline I've created is 30 frames per second. The reason I've done this is purely because I shoot at 50 frames per second and it allows me to slow my footage down to 60%. Now this is good, so even when time remapping or playing with the time stretch tool, it gives you that flexibility so you don't get any frame dropping or choppy footage. So the first clip we're going to use is the exterior clip. Now I've gone and trimmed the area I want to use. So just obvious things. So for example, we don't want to involve that cone on the left hand side, and right at the end, the camera becomes a bit shaky and whatnot. So what I've done is trim the area I want to use and I want to drop it into my timeline. Now before I start any of this process, I am going to stabilize the footage. Now the stabilization I like to use when it's not the planar tracker is similarity, and I find that 1 is too strong, so I usually bring it down to about 0.5 to start. I'll let that run through and we'll check if there's any warping or anything's grabbing on any walls or footage is jumping around. It looks pretty good. Awesome. Now once that's done, we create a new fusion clip. Now the reason you create a fusion clip is so you have less clip to work with in Fusion. If you don't create a Fusion clip, what happens is when you put it into Fusion, you get the whole lot, every single frame that you shot. So creating a Fusion clip minimizes that into just this part, which is the working area. Now open Fusion, and the first thing you want to do is type in time stretcher. Now, this is the biggest problem I believe people ran into from my last tutorial. When selecting time stretcher, it automatically puts a keyframe in. And I think that went over a lot of people's heads because it definitely did with me at the start. So for example, if you drop in time stretcher and your playhead is right at the start, it's going to drop in a keyframe there. But what it's done for me is it's dropped a keyframe on my second marker. So let's get rid of this keyframe. And let's bring this playhead right to the start and create a new keyframe at 0.0, because this is the start of the clip. No frames have played through. The next thing you want to do is go right to the end of your clip and see how many frames there are in your clip. So there's 287. Then what I want to do is go back to my first marker, which is 35 frames. And now I want to compress 287 clips into a space of 35 frames. 287 frames into a space of 35 frames. So going up to your source time on your right hand side, you want to type in 287. It's now compressed that clip into that space of time. Next, click these arrows just here and in the graph will appear your frames from 0 to 287. Now we want the clip to start slow and we want it to zoom straight out. So grabbing the Bezier, we want to bring it down, and then grabbing this Bezier, we want to bring it down. Now what this does is it's slow, and then fast right up to this point. Now playing it back, we should have a pretty snappy speed ramp. Bit of lag, but you get the idea. Cool. So that snaps in. All right. Now, that is all we need to do in Fusion right now. So let's head it back to the edit page. And now we want to trim this down because we don't need this. All this is just static. It's a dead clip. So we want to trim this down. Now, a little tip and trick I can teach you guys is what will happen on your marker, that is your final frame, and that's where you want it to finish. But if you trim it down to this point, you're going to lose that end frame. So what you want to do is go one frame over, and then at the start of your clip, you want to take off one frame. And now you're going to get the full stretch of your speed ramp. Awesome. Now you want to create a new Fusion clip, or you can render it in place. I'm actually going to render it in place just for processing power and so we don't have lag for this tutorial. I rendered it at ProRes 4444XV, and the reason I'm doing that is for color grading purposes. I'll save it anywhere for now. Now the next thing you want to do is head up to your effects. Now everyone that has purchased my zoom in and zoom out transition, I will send you an updated version, which is a lot easier to use, to the email address you guys provided to me. So going down to your effects, you just want to search up Juco zoom in 1, and you want to place that on the clip, and that there is automatically going to create the zoom in and zoom out with all the removing all the fuss from Fusion in the previous tutorial. It's a much easier to use. Awesome. All right, going on to the second clip. Now the second clip, I would like to go into the kitchen, or into the living space I should say. Now I've trimmed it up, I've got my working area. So this is the clip here. Looks good. All right, awesome. So same thing. Now with this one, we're actually not going to use the stabilization, similarity mode. I'm actually going to show you guys how to use the planar tracker. Now the planar tracker is a great tool to stabilize footage. It becomes silky smooth. Sometimes people message me and they'll say, oh, how is it so smooth, or what's the secret? There's no secret. It's just sometimes I spend a little bit of extra time applying the planar tracker. It can be done in After Effects. It can be done in DaVinci. I'll show you how to do it in DaVinci today. So first things first, what you want to do is create a new Fusion clip. With the Fusion clip, you then want to jump into Fusion. On the clip, of course. Now you want to type in planar tracker. Now with the planar tracker sort of dropped in, you then want to head up to your right and you want to set a frame, a reference frame, I guess. Now I usually go halfway in the middle, somewhere about there, and I'll hit set. The next thing you want to do is draw the area you want to track. So I'm going to track, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I'm going to track this light just here. So I'm just going to draw a square around this. Doesn't have to be super neat, but something like that. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you want to adjust the motion type. Now, you don't need perspective, you don't need scale, you don't need rotation. Translation is more than enough for this. So select translation, and then you're going to track left and you're going to track right. All right, once that is complete, what you need to do is actually head down here and hit steady. And that's going to stabilize your footage for you. So I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's to stabilize my footage. There's not much, it's a pretty smooth clip to be honest. but it's done that slight bit of stabilization. Now you can see up here, it's you can see I guess the grid behind. So what you want to do is go to your edit page and you just want to use transform. You just want to extend it a bit. And then play it through. Just make sure you got no black areas. That looks good to me. Once you've done that, hit new fusion clip. Head into fusion. And the same thing, I'm going to type in time stretcher. Now, on your first frame, make sure it is your first frame. That's what I was just doing. I was just checking if I dropped it in and it was on my first frame. So on your first marker, your first frame, it should be 0.0. The next thing you want to do is you want to drag to the end of your clip and you've got 383 frames. So the next thing you want to do is find your second marker, or your marker after, and type in 383. And once again, it brings all 383 frames into a space of 35 frames. Hit these arrows to bring the graph into sight. Now, this is the opposite. So you want to bring your Bezier up, and you want to bring this one across. Now, a little tip and trick. You see how my Bezier is below the line? That's not going to be a smooth exit. You always want your Bezier either in line with it or above it. So what that means is I have to drop this Bezier down. All I've done there is move the marker. So now if I jump onto this Bezier, I'll just move this marker out of the way again. So I'll bring that down a bit. Now if your line becomes horizontal, that means your clip is static. So you always want it heading in a diagonal of some sort or an up direction. So let's play that through. Awesome. Now I'm just going to trim this up. And I'm actually going to render it in place. And the reason I'm doing that is purely because it's a bit laggy. So let's watch it through again. Awesome. That is crispy. Now same thing. If you head to your effects and head to Juco Zoom, get Zoom in 2, you drop it in. And what that's going to do is just smooth it out even further. Cool. On, off. Just adds that little bit of extra sauce. All right, now let's watch it back with some music. All right. Now the next thing I'm going to do, building this sequence, is I want to put in 2 detail shots of the living space. So first thing I'm going to do is start with a close shot, which is just here of this seat. Awesome. Now you can either hit stabilization by hitting similarity or perspective and hitting stabilize, and it should stabilize pretty well. You can also go through and use the planar tracker on that clip as well. You can mask out the seat and use the planar tracker to keep it dead center of the frame. That's very popular to do, like when you're doing a hyperlapse or something along those lines. It's a very popular tool for the same outcome. Now the next thing I want to do is drop in another clip of the living space, which you can see here. Now the reason I'm using this clip is because now it tells the viewer there is a set of stairs. Somewhere here there is a void in the hallway, there's stairs, and you can see the living space from these stairs, which in turn, our next part of the sequence is going to be located within the stairs or around the stairs. So let's drag and drop that in. It's just leading the viewer into the next part of the video. Cool. This is what it looks like reversed. Nah, definitely the other way. I'm just going to hit stabilize. Let's try that with similarity. Awesome. All right, now another thing I'm going to do on this clip is just add a little bit of dynamic zoom. So I'm not too aggressive. So if you don't get the green and the red box, what you want to do is just come down here, hit dynamic zoom. I want to drag it out. Cool, and that really starts to open up the space. You know, adds an extra depth, extra piece, like, you know, extra dimension to your shot. Cool. Now that also leads into my next shot, and the dynamic zoom does come in handy because this shot is also going to have dynamic zoom on it. So what that does, it ties the two shots or the two detail shots together. So, you know, they're heading in the same direction, backwards in a sense. So we're going to use this one here. I've already trimmed it up, I've got it ready. And the same thing goes, I'm going to apply some dynamic zoom to it. I'm going to stabilize this. Let's see if similarity works. Cool, there's no wobbles in that. Next thing is dynamic zoom, and not too aggressive, just a little bit. Oofed, that looks very nice. All right, the next up is a shot of the pool. Just a quick glimpse, just so the viewer knows, okay, we're currently in the hallway or the void or the stairway, and now we're going to move into the pool. They don't know it's coming, but they do at the same time. So this clip here, which focuses on this void in the house, this stairway, and the pool in one hit. So I'm just going to drag that in. Make sure it lines up with my markers. Awesome. Now this clip is great. This does annoy me. This has the wobbles in it. Now to avoid it, what we can do is maybe just slow it down to 80, and it's not as prominent. Another thing we can do is hit transform and just move it out of the way a little bit. Cool, awesome. I'm happy with that. All right, now the next clip we're going to use is this one here. So starting in the hallway and dragging out. Now, for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm not going to stabilize this, but obviously you can stabilize it with any of the two ways I showed you. But just so we keep moving with it. So first things first, I've got my trimmed area, the area I want to work with. The clip is heading in the right direction. I don't have to reverse it or anything like that. So I'm going to hit create new fusion clip. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into fusion. Make sure my playhead is on the first frame. I'm going to type in time stretcher, which is already there for me. Now, first frame is 0. Last frame is 235. And now what we want to do is go to the marker, and we're going to type in 235. Hit these two arrows, which is going to bring the whole graph in sight for you. Now, this is a little bit different. So rather than curving up, we're going to grab the Bezier and drag it this way. Oops, sorry, I am incorrect. This way, just like the first clip, and then we're going to drag this one down. Now, if I have my Bezier like this, the clip will be very static at the start. It's going to be very, very static right here, and then it's going to start to speed up. So what you want to do is shorten this Bezier and get it so it's moving from the start. I find if your clips become static in a fast-moving real estate video, it sort of rattles the viewer. It kills the momentum. So a good trick is to keep the momentum going in your videos, whether that means matching the pace of your clips and the speed you walk, or speeding them up in post, or your detail shots aren't just slow left to right. So there is a fair bit of movement when you go left to right, but just keep your speed and momentum consistent. So what I mean by that is don't drag this out the whole way, so it's basically static or very slow moving here. Bring it in a bit shorter, let the clip start and take off. So let's watch that back. Awesome. Now, I think from what I'm looking at, I think I do need a bit more snap at the end. So I'm just going to move this marker out of the way. I'm going to drag this a little bit down so there's more snap. And as a result, this will have to come back a bit. Maybe not that much. Cool. All right, that looks good. So now what we want to do is come here. Now it's the same scenario, guys. Basically, if you trim all the way to this marker, what is going to happen is you're going to lose that last frame. So you're going to basically finish there rather than finishing here, okay? So we want to trim, let's trim it to the marker so you can see what happens. Oh, actually pretty good. Oh no, hang on, we did move our marker, sorry. So if we trim to this marker, you're going to lose that last frame. I think that's where a lot of people are saying, how are you getting that snappy exit or that snappy entry? And that is a little trick I've learned. So you want to trim it basically one frame over. Now that also goes back to what I was saying about the graph and having it very straight or horizontal at the start. If you find that, or you just haven't got enough length in your ramp to sort of bring that curve in and whatnot, blah, 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 what you can do is leave it horizontal, because you are going to trim off this first frame. You can even trim off more, but we're going to trim off that first frame. That part that is slowest in the speed ramp, we're trimming it off to allow for that extra frame at the end just here. And that looks pretty good to me. All right. Awesome. Once that's done, let's render it into place. We don't want to use any processing power we don't need to. All right, next up is the drone clip. Now, before we start working on the drone clip, let's go to effects. Let's type in zoom, which is already there for me. We're going to do zoom out 1, because this is the first clip. And that's just going to create the zoom out transition for me. Awesome, and just adds that little bit extra. That's good. All right, so now the drone clip. You'll find with drone clips, you can't get as much done in the same sort of duration of time as your other clips. So for example, these clips between the markers is basically just over 1 second or 35 frames, as you saw. So you're going to need a little bit longer. So let's skip one marker and we're going to go to the second marker, which is this one here. All right. So first things first, this is heading in the wrong direction. So I'm just going to reverse this. And then I'm going to create a new fusion clip, making sure I'm using the correct working area. Yep, awesome. All right, new fusion clip. Jumping into fusion. Time stretcher, making sure I'm on the first frame. Time stretcher. So frame at the very start, first keyframe, 0.0. Then what you want to do is right to the end, we've got 1016, but then we want to find our second marker, which is this one here, which is 71 frames, and we want to make that 1016 frames. Pressing the arrows to bring it in, back in. Oops, I just realized I entered it in the wrong spot. Here, 1016. Awesome. Now pressing your arrows. Cool. Okay, so in this scenario, what we want to do is we want to speed in, we want to slow, and then we want to speed back out. So I call this the snake or the S shape, whatever it is. Now, you can do this manually. Now, also what I've worked out, something you can do within DaVinci, you can use this on all the speed ramps we have sort of created today. If you highlight your key points and right click and you go to ease, you have a whole bunch of options along with a dialogue. So the dialogue means you can make a perfect arc every time. Now for this example, you want to do out and in cubic, something like that. But I'm just going to do it manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this first key point and bring my Bezier up because I was speeding in. And I'm grabbing this second Bezier and coming down. Now you've got to be careful not to drag too far up or too far down, because like I said, if the middle of this graph or curve becomes horizontal, your clip will come to a complete stop. So you just want to keep it gradually increasing so your clip continues to move. awesome. So let's watch that back. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Now with this one, hit Control B. Same thing though, you'll see here, if I extend this by 1 frame, you're going to get more. Now, there's not much you can do in this scenario. I generally just trim it. There's enough ramp in it, along with the transitions we're about to add, the zoom in and zoom out. So once that's done, render into place. And now what we want to do, this is a little bit of a different scenario because we can't apply both the zoom out 1 and zoom out 2 on the same clip. So what you want to do is go to adjustment layer, adjustment clip. You want to trim it to the working area. It's about there. And same on the end. And now you want to apply these transitions on your adjustment. So right here we have zoom out 2, and right here we have zoom out 1. Cool. Yeah, awesome. You can see that working there. Yeah, awesome, that's working as well. All right, once that's complete, what I do just to simplify it, you can leave your adjustment layers on. I'll create a new compound clip and then I render it into place. Now let's watch back what we have created so far. That is looking good so far, so let's keep adding to it. Next up is the pool shot. Now you've told the viewer we're going to the pool. You know, they've seen the pool previously, they've seen it in the drone shot, so let's head to a pool clip, which is, it might not be in my folder. Nope, oh, what is it? No, we haven't got it in the folder, so what we're going to do is we're going to head back to the master and we're going to look for it. This is it here. Cool, we'll drag that in. I've already trimmed up the area. All right, so this one is heading in the wrong direction. So let's reverse it. Now, what I find with these clips, a little tip and trick, like when you're starting off a pullback transition or a zoom out, if you're right up against the wall and you have this bold white or black wall in front of your clip, it doesn't look great once applying the transition or even with the speed ramp, it's very bold at that point. So I always pull back a little bit and I'll trim the clip to there and you'll see why in a moment. And that's our full clip. So now I'm going to create a new fusion clip. All right. Now, in Fusion, we want to go to time stretcher, making sure the playhead is at the start. It is awesome. So we've got a keyframe at 0. And now we want to drag it to that marker, which is at 36 frames. And your total clip is 254 frames. So what we want to do is go back to your marker just here. What do we say it was? 254. And we want to make it 254. Hitting these arrows to bring it back in. Now what we want, this Bezier comes up and this one comes up. Might just move this out of the way, might just bring this down a bit. And we'll watch it back. Awesome, that looks great. Let's render this into place or create a new Fusion clip. Don't have to, but the next thing we're going to do is Juco zoom out 2. I'm going to drop that on. Now, if you can see here, if I turn it off and on, you see how it brings the wall closer to the camera. Or, you know, if you had started your clip at that wall, you're just going to have white or black as a starting frame, which can be very dominant in the transition. It doesn't really sell it. All right, next up, we want to add in 2 shots of the pool. So we're going to add in this one here. I think it's pretty cool. And the last one we're going to add in is sort of what we just saw. Now the reason I added in this one first and not this one was because this clip here is pulling back. The direction of it is backward and the direction of this is forward. So I find it a bit, it doesn't sit well when you've got a scene that involves, you know, the lounge chairs and the pool heading backward, and then the first scene after is the same scene in a sense, heading in the opposite direction, heading forward. It doesn't look right. So what I've done is I've chucked this one in between to change the direction the camera's moving, which then leads back into the lounge chairs and the pool. All right, that looks pretty good to me, but now let's add some more sauce onto it. Now, with the motion blur, you can jump on my website. As I said earlier, it is free. It is not perfect yet. It is in the beta. It's usable with the free and the paid version. I have come up with a better motion blur for the paid version, which I'll go through now. A lot of people have asked me, or have actually commented and said, I've used your motion blur settings and they don't work, blah, 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 blah. Now, it is because when you apply motion blur to a clip or over the space of 2 clips in DaVinci, what it does, it takes a frame before and after, and you get this artifacting, or it doesn't look right. So what you can do, which I find very effective, is go to your effects and go to your adjustment layer. And drag it on to the part that is speed ramped, or the part you want to speed ramp at the start and the end. The next thing you want to do is go to motion blur. You might have to do this in Fusion. Motion blur, add it. Now, oh, wrong one, sorry guys, motion. Oh. All right, so once you have motion blur added, first thing you want to do, a little bit of a change from the last video, you don't want to change this to better. I find better makes the edges wobbly, especially with all the time remapping and time stretching. So you want to leave it on faster. And then with your amount of blur or amount of motion range depends on the clip. Now let's watch it back to see what we're getting. That looks pretty good to me. Like, that is something I would use. I'm happy with that. There's no artifacting. It's not grabbing frames from the next video, blah, blah, blah. It looks great. I wouldn't change much more on that. Now we can play with the settings so you guys can see what it does. So motion blur amount, it becomes too blurry. Let's have a look. And you start to get, you know, I can still see the trees here. So I don't love that. So let's go back. Let's keep it to where it was. Awesome. Now with this motion blur, or this adjustment layer, drag it to all the clips you want it on. Oops. This one here, 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 and here. That is starting to look pretty good to me. Now the last thing we want to do is give it a quick color grade. Let's just chuck this one on. This is the Juco color grade. I might just make some adjustments just so we see how it looks. Oops. Okay. Oops, wrong one. All right, awesome. So just some quick adjustments, just so you can see the final product with all the colors. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a new compound clip, and then I'm going to render it in place. And I'm only doing this so I can have a smooth playback and show you what we have created. All right, let's have a watch. Ooh. What happened there, guys? I'm confused as to what happened just then. Start again. Well, the motion blur has not liked this clip at all, but conveniently enough, we have the Juco Media motion blur. So let's delete this adjustment layer. Let's get an adjustment layer and chuck it back in. And then what we want to do is head over to our effects. And we want to type in Juco and click Juco Blur. And now the Juco Blur is going to do the work for us. It's lagging a bit, but let's make a compound clip. And render it into place. Awesome. All right, let's watch it back. And that is everything I know about speed ramps within DaVinci Resolve. I'm sure people have explained more. I have seen tutorials pop up on YouTube now since posting the original. So I haven't actually watched any of them, but I'm sure people have given better insights maybe. But this is how I include this style of speed ramping with real estate in DaVinci Resolve.